Hello, this is Cascade, and welcome to my podcast, The Way Door, where I talk about the Christian worldview. Today, I want to talk about what it means to accept the essentials of the Christian faith. These are essential doctrines of the Christian faith. But before I do that, I want to talk about the three main branches of Christianity. And they are as follows. And it is Roman Catholicism. The second one is the Greek Orthodox Church. And the third one would be all of the Protestant churches. Now, I'm calling these the three branches of Christianity because all three of these groups adhere to essential Christian doctrines. I'm going to list 5 essential doctrines, and the first 4 are accepted universally by all three branches of Christianity. So I would say that anything outside of these 3 branches of Christianity, even though they claim to be Christian, would not be Christian in the Orthodox way. And what I mean by Orthodox is that they accept these essential Christian doctrines. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to start with the first essential Christian doctrine, which really trips up some of these so-called groups that call themselves Christian, but they would not accept this, or it's not part of their belief system. And when I talk about doctrine, I'm talking about a belief system that you have accepted as essential. So the first one is the Trinity. And the Trinity, maybe you've heard of this before. It's I can't explain it all because we're talking about God, who is an uncaused causer of all things. He never came into being, and he will never go out of existence. Now, we can't wrap our minds around that because he's God and we're not. We are created beings that have eternity after this life. Where we're going to live that eternity depends upon one of the other essential Christian doctrines that I'll talk about here in just a little bit. So the Trinity is the first essential Christian doctrine. And the Trinity says that there is only one God, but there is 3 persons of the Trinity. Not 3 gods, but 3 persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's one being, 3 persons. They are co-equal. One is not over the other. They are co-equal. And another way to describe it is one divine essence. That's the one God with 3 distinct persons. So you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the Trinity is huge, and it separates the Christian worldview from other maybe pseudo-Christian beliefs. There's one group that I'm familiar with very well, and I would say they're polytheistic. In other words, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are 3 separate gods. And so that is not what Orthodox Christianity, and that is not an essential Christian doctrine. So another group that I'm familiar with as well, and they've actually has their own translation of the Bible that's different from the earliest Greek manuscripts that we have. They believe that the Son came into existence. Jesus came into existence. Of course, there was the incarnation, but they believe that he was not with the Father eternally. He is not God. There is only one God, and that would be just the Father. And so that would lay outside of this essential Christian doctrine of the Trinity. So the first essential Christian doctrine, you can find this in the Roman Catholic, the Greek Orthodox, and all Protestant churches, is belief in the Trinity. One God, 3 persons. The second essential Christian doctrine is the nature of Jesus, in that he was 100% God and 100% man. He fully identified with us as a man. He went through everything, yet without sin. But he was also 100% God. He was with God in the beginning. And Jesus even said to other people, the Father and I are one. In other words, he is God. And that's why the Jewish people in the Sanhedrin condemned him, because Jesus was asked outright at the Sanhedrin by Caiaphas, are you the Son of the living God? And he said, I am, and you'll see me descending on the clouds of heaven. And he was making a Daniel comment there, comment from the book of Daniel. And they knew right away what he was saying. He was saying that he was God himself and that he was judge, and they wanted to stone him. They condemned him, and the high priest Caiaphas tore his robe. In other words, he deserved death because he had claimed that he was co-equal with God. So the second part of the central Christian doctrines is the nature of Jesus, 100% God, 100% man. And this again is accepted by the three branches of Christianity across the board. The third essential Christian doctrine is that Jesus bodily rose from the dead. In other words, he was not some phantom spirit. He was not immaterial, but he bodily rose from the dead. And we have examples of this where he presented himself before Thomas and said, you can touch me. And Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. He recognized that he was God, and Jesus had risen from the dead. He was there in person, materially, and he had a physical body. And Jesus even ate and with his disciples one time on the shore. He was eating fish with his disciples. And so that is the third essential doctrine, that Jesus bodily rose from the dead. The fourth one is very, very important, and that is salvation by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. And this is really separates Christianity from other religions, because pretty much all religions, you have to perform some kind of work. You have to do something. You have to go through steps in order to achieve salvation. But Christianity is based on Jesus Christ. And that's going to lead me to the fifth one here in just a little bit. So salvation through grace, through faith, you cannot work your way to salvation. It's only found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And he was gracious to come here, and we accept him by faith. And it's placing our faith in him that and the work that he did on the cross for us, whereby we can be saved. The fifth essential Christian doctrine is that salvation is found only through Jesus. There are not multiple ways to God. There is only one way to God. In fact, that's what John and Peter said to the same Sanhedrin in Acts chapter 4, verse 12. It says this: there is salvation in no one else. God has given no other name under heaven in which we must be saved. So those are the five essential Christian doctrines: the Trinity, the nature of Jesus, 100% God, 100% man, bodily resurrection of Jesus, salvation by grace through faith, and salvation through Jesus alone. Now, I want to read one final comment here. This is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and Paul is talking to the Corinthian church. And I'm going to read the first, first 5 verses, but just concentrate on one. So here's Paul speaking. He said this: when I first came to you, dear brothers and sisters, I didn't use lofty words and impressive wisdom to tell you God's secret plan. For I decided that while I was with you, I would forget everything except Jesus Christ, the one who was crucified. I came to you in weakness, timid, and trembling, and my message and my preaching were very plain. Rather than using clever and persuasive words, I relied only on the power of the Holy Spirit. I did this so you would not trust in human wisdom, but in the power of God. So I want to make 2 comments here. First of all, the Trinity is listed in this little passage here. It talks about God's secret plan in verse 1. It talks about, I did this so you would trust not in human wisdom, but in the power of God. There's God the Father. And then it talks about, in verse 2, it talks about Jesus Christ. There's the second person of the Trinity. And then also it talks about the Holy Spirit, and that is found in verse 4. I relied only on the power of the Holy Spirit. So we have the Holy Trinity here, and there's numerous times throughout the New Testament, and even in the Old Testament, it mentions the Trinity. I think it's in Genesis 1:27. It says there, "Let us," plural, not various gods, one God existing in three parts. Let us make man in our image. So the second point I want to make is that we can argue over all kinds of non-essential Christian doctrines all day long. And unfortunately, churches do get in discussion. And so we have so many different Protestant churches. They're all Christian. They accept the essential Christian doctrines, but they have peculiar non-essential doctrine beliefs. But here's what Paul had to say. For I decided, this is verse 2 of 1 Corinthians chapter 2. For I decided that while I was with you, I would forget everything except Jesus Christ, the one who was crucified. And that's what it really boils down to. It doesn't matter about the non-essential peculiar beliefs that we have, but that we are on Jesus' side. And people that are followers of Jesus, people that are Christian, would adhere to all five of these essential Christian doctrines. So that's going to do it for me today with the Way Door. Please send any comments or questions you may have my way. And I just thank you for listening and watching this little podcast here. And until next time, I hope your day and your week is a blessed one.